Hello everyone. About a year ago or so, I did a commander deck tech for my boy Daxos the Returned. And a lot has changed with them in the past year, so I wanted to do an update on them. For those of you who do not know, and you can't see through the altar because I barely can, Daxos the Returned is a 1 Orzhov legendary zombie soldier. He says whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you get an experience counter. Then you can pay 1 in Orzhov, and you make an XX spirit, where X is the number of experience counters you have. So incrementally, they get bigger. So the whole point of this deck is essentially to make your opponents not have fun. You don't want them to play the game, and the whole goal is while they're not playing the game, you're racking up experience counters by playing even meaner and meaner enchantments that put you ahead and them behind. Not going to go too much into basics. I run 5 plains and 6 swamps. The deck runs a total of 35 lands. So I put the lands in front, and then the rest of the deck isn't in any particular order. Let's just hop into it. And I just kind of want to say why I run each card, and maybe you can have some ideas for your deck. So Scrubland. We'll start off. This deck is not budget. It just straight up isn't. So going through that, Scrubland, because it is the OG duel. Serra's Sanctum is literally Gaia's Cradle, but for enchantments. So when you're playing an enchantment deck, that's kind of key. Reliquary Tower, so we have no max hand size. Shambling Vent. So I want to start it off. I have a lot of duels. If we have only 11 basics, that means we're cruising at, 24 non-basics, I guess. So I like having all the Orzhov duels. Let's go to it. Comes in tapped, which sucks. Taps for both, or it can sometimes be a 2/3 with Vigilant or Lifelink, which is a good blocker. Maze of Ith. So we're playing Prison, so we're kind of playing Pillow Fort in a way. We don't want our opponents to attack us too much. So Maze of Ith kind of helps with that. Concealed Courtyard, just because it's early game and untapped duel, late game, Fetid Heath to filter mana. Temple of the False God. It's not a great card. I'll concede to that, but I like it. I think it's fine. Orzhov doesn't have a ton of ramp anyways, so Command Tower because it's Command Tower. Bajuka Bog, just the easy exile a grave. Vault of Champions because it usually comes in untapped. Cave of Coilless enters untapped. Yeah, you can tap for either and ping yourself. Urborg, is tricky because a lot of people are making cases nowadays with the new Yavimaya mono green Urborg is basically that it enables your opponents. I think so, yeah. This is actually the first Magic single I ever bought. So it can, but we have like other things that can benefit us. Plus, it turns all of our planes into duels anyways, so it works out well. Godless Shrine, because it's a shock land. Bright Climb Pathway. You just pick one or the other. I think it's fine. Snarl, because early game it comes in untapped, and everyone knows you have lands in your hand anyway. In worst case scenario, it just comes in untapped. Isolated Chapel, because it's a check Ghost Quarter to get rid of a problem land. Temple of Silence to scry one. Karn's Bastion, because we proliferate experience counters. We just do. Marsh Flats to get our OG duel or our shock land. Hall of Heliod's Generosity, because we pay 1 and a white to put an enchantment card from our graveyard back on top of our deck. Tainted Field, because, again, Urborg works with it, I guess, and we usually have a swamp, so typically an untapped duel. Silent Clearing, kind of like Cave of Coilless in a weird way, I guess, or we can just sack it and draw a card. So that is all the lands. We'll get into the real meat and cheese of the deck. It's not really in a particular order, I don't believe, except for the last few cards, which I just double-checked. So let's go through them. And the whole goal, again, is to get experience counters so we can start paying 3 mana to get, 7/7s at instant speed. So we can, dump our board, make a bunch of boys. Good blockers, good combat tricks. So, Ethereal Absolution. Mini Elish Norn. Creatures get +1/+1. Your opponents get -1/-1. You can pay 4 mana for a little bit of Grave Hate, and if you exile a creature, you basically get a 2/2 flyer. Anguished Unmaking, because 3 life and 3 mana to permanently get rid of a non-land is really good. Talisman, just because it's a rock. Starfield Mystic, it's an enchantment cost reducer, and whenever an enchantment goes away, and our spirits are, again, enchantment creatures, he gets big, and people don't want to swing into him. So, Path to Exile, just because it's easy removal. Getting a land usually isn't that big of a deal. And there's a lot of cases about Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, which I do want to talk about in the future, but not this video. Sigil of Empty Throne. Again, enchantments are our win con, and this is kind of one of them. If we can get a 4/4 flyer just by playing our deck anyways, we can just beat him with that. Oubliette, good card, reprinted card, used to be a ton of money. I like it just because it permanently gets rid of a commander until they deal with it, and a lot of commanders in certain colors, like mono red, really can't deal with Oubliette. Mono black has like 1 or 2 cards that deals with it. Yeah, just getting rid of a commander, and they can't put it to the command zone because it phases out. It doesn't exile or change any zones. It just simply phases. So, Soul Ring, because it's a Soul Ring, and plus he's a little snowman. Thought Vessel, no max hand size, it's a rock. Black Market, just so we can get some counters on it and get a ton of mana. Again, there's not a lot of ramp in Orzhov, so kind of comes in clutch. Archon of Sun's Grace, kind of like Sigil of the Empty Throne, whenever an enchantment, except this one's, in my opinion, a little bit better, honestly. 4 mana, flying, lifelink 3/4, not even a bad rate. Pegasus get lifelink, and then whenever an enchantment comes into play, you make a 2/2 flying lifelinker. Works for me. Kind of like an alt win con, I guess. Kind of like Sigil of the Empty Throne, but again, our main win con is just beaten down with our big spirits. But, Sigil and this, work out. Oblivion Ring, we have removal because we're in black and white, and if we can use our removal by also getting experience counter, so we're going to do so. Kind of the same thing as O-Ring, but it hits more than just one. Signet, because it's a Signet, it's good rock. Erebos, so we're going to look more into punishment cards, and I'll talk about it when we see them. Erebos, opponents can't gain life. That sucks, and that'll shut down a lot of decks. Plus, you can pay 2 mana and pay 2 life, draw a card at instant speed. It's really not even a bad rate, and there's not a lot of card draw in white and black that doesn't really hurt you. Phyrexian Arena, for more card draw in white and black, that will hurt you. Draw an extra card and lose life on your upkeep. That's a good rate. Blind Obedience is another one of those mean, oppressive prison cards. Again, artifacts and creatures our opponents control enter tapped, so their mana rocks won't net them anything if they have that, or they can't filter, or aggro just simply doesn't work. Sometimes combo decks don't work because they can't do it. Let's see. Eldest Reborn. I've only played with this card a few times since I've had it, and I like it a lot. So it comes into play, worst case scenario, your opponent sack nothing or they sack a token, but best case scenario, you hit value creatures or really whatever. Then everyone discards a card, and then you get the best creature or planeswalker and you just put it on your field. Works for me. Greater Oromancy, so our enchantments have Shroud. Enchanted creatures have Shroud, not super relevant, but yeah, just giving our other enchantment Shroud is a good deal. Mortify, to pop a creature or an enchantment. Extinguish all hope, destroy all non-enchantment creatures. Guess what? These ghosts are enchantment creatures, so that's pretty good. Grasp of Fate, it's basically O-Ring, but for each opponent. It's good. It adds really weird politics to the game, honestly, because you can make the arguments hey, if we're in a 4-person pod, which is usually how I look at when I evaluate cards, we're in a 4-person pod, right? Yeah, you can pop it and get your good thing back. Let's say I take one of your good creatures, but then your opponents each get a really good thing from their field. So it's is you losing one worth keeping your opponents locked down? Probably kinda. Cast Out, it's just instant speed O-Ring, and sometimes you can cycle it if you just don't like it. Cabal, he shuts down Storm or any kind of spell slinging decks, or even if he doesn't, you're not going against those in a matchup. He's a 3-mana 2/3 that just gains you life and trains your opponents. And yeah, he's really annoying. Lunarch Ascension is good in theory, and if you play it early game, it's incredibly good, and it can just close out games early game. But beginning your upkeep, if you didn't lose life this turn, put a quest counter on it. If you have 4 quest counters on it, pay 2 mana to make a 4/4 flyer. That's a pretty good rate. So that's why it's in there. So early game, no one's really attacking anyway because they're getting set up, and then you can start pooping out 4/4s. Resurgent Belief. I have yet to play this card, but it is replenished with Suspend, and we are in an enchantment deck. So I like it. Rest in Peace. Aside from this card, we don't really play with our grave too often. We really don't. And shutting down Reanimator or Mill or any other kind of those grave heavy decks, Dredge, this shuts them down at really low cost to us. Idyllic Tutor, because you get an enchantment. Attrition is weird. I like it because, it is essentially You can look at it in a weird way, as with Daxos, you pay essentially 1 white, black, black to destroy a target non-black creature. Like if you make a ghost and then instantly get rid of it. It's not bad. It's not like a great rate, but I mean, if you're not making them at instant speed or you have like other tokens, like again, just paying a mana to kill a non-black creature is pretty good. Seal of Cleansing, it's pretty simple. 2 mana. You leave it on the field, you get an experience counter, and then destroy target artifact or enchantment you don't like. And, even just leaving it as a threat on the field, people will want to try and play around it. Swords to Plowshares, it's just good. I like Swords to Plowshares. Thought Render Lamia is just kind of like a meme I have in this deck because it's kind of 3 mana. Each opponent discards a card. And then you can get like kind of late game where it's like, hey, I'm going to make 3 ghosts, or I'm going to make, well, realistically, hey, like end of your turn, I'm going to make 2 ghosts. I'm going to pay 6 mana, and then all of my opponents are each going to discard 2 cards. I kind of like it. At the very worst case scenario, it's a 6 mana 5/3 that makes each opponent discard a card, and then it dies. Deadly Tempest, destroy all creatures. Each player loses life equal to the number of creatures he or she controlled that were destroyed this way. It's a good deck. It destroys token decks. I want Meat Hook Massacre instead. I saw Meat Hook Massacre. I haven't opened one. I don't want to spend like $40 for one. So Deadly Tempest has been in here since the beginning. It's the, from the pre-con, but damn, do I want a Meat Hook Massacre. Ethereal Armor, I just kind of like. It's a 1 mana enchantment, so it's a 1 mana experience counter. You can toss on Daxos, and I've won with it like commander damage like once or twice since I've had this deck. But generally, he just makes Daxos like an annoying blocker. Like, he's going to be, at the very worst, a 3/3 first striker, which is pretty annoying for a blocker anyways. So yeah, that's just kind of why it's there. Ghostly Prison, we don't want people attacking us, and Ghostly Prison makes that happen. It shuts down token decks, and even if it doesn't deal with token decks, it kind of deals with like the politics of other people. It's like, hey, like, do I really want to pay 2 mana to like sneak in some damage that you can just make a ghost and block anyways? Is it really worth it? So kind of bothers our opponents. Lapse of Certainty. Nobody expects a mono white counter spell. I'm not saying it's good. I just like it because no one expects mono white counter spells aside from Mana Tithe. Painful Quandary is a good heavy hitter in the deck because it makes our opponents not want to cast spells because discarding cards or losing life is definitely rough. Lightning Greaves, we put it on Daxos. The deck kind of needs Daxos to win. Like, we have the Archon of Sun's Grace, Sigil of the Empty Throne, we have all these like mean oppression cards, but like our main win con is big spirits, and we want to keep Daxos protected. Authority of the Consuls, again, kind of like blind obedience. It stops aggro, and it gains us a ton of life. Mace Enchantress, whenever you cast an enchantment, draw a card. Works for me. Revenge of the Ravens is, to me, like an alternate, I guess, Ghostly Prison, because it kind of, it's almost worse in a way for opponents, because it's like, yeah, I can attack you, right? But then I'm going to get hit too. Like, so basically it makes it not worth it to attack with 1/1s because like they're just going to get drained anyways. So it just kind of makes it tricky. I like it. I like what it does. I played it in Arena a lot when Eldraine was like a big deal. Still is a big deal. Eldraine's a nut set. But I think it's good. Anointed Procession, instead of making 1 token, you make 2 tokens. I make a lot of ghosts. I make even more ghosts now. Bolas' Citadel is like a pet card to me. When it resolves, the game's like over. That's kind of it. I just really like Bolas' Citadel. You start popping off. This deck gains a decent amount of life. It's not anything crazy, but sacking 10 non-lands isn't super relevant, but I mean, it can work like in a pinch. Sphere of Safety is basically just a super version of Ghostly Prison. Typically, I have like 5 like at the low end, I have 5 enchantments on the field, so it's like pay 5 to attack me per creature, and that kind of sucks. Martyr's Bond is a weird effect, and you know what? I'm gonna tuck it in the back, and I'll talk about it later because that kind of combos with another card. I just realized now. I knew, but you know what I mean. When I was before filming. Monologue Tax. 3 mana. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, create a treasure. Not a lot of ramp in Orzhov. Again, you make your own. Orb of Silence. Everyone hates. Artifacts and enchantments cost 2 more to cast for your opponents, and then you can just sack it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. So this is what's so good about this card. 1, it makes like mana rocks really annoying to play and really not even worth it. And 2, you don't even want to play the artifacts you have because they're just going to go away. And if you try and get rid of it, just be like, oh, I'll sack it in response. Karmic Justice, in theory, it's really good. It's helped me out a couple times, and maybe it's helped me out in ways I don't know, because it says whenever opponent's spell or ability would destroy one of your non-creature permanents, you may destroy a permanent they control. I've never seen it directly affect the game, but I guess I'm not seeing it directly affect my board state because my opponents don't want me blowing up their lands, which I probably would do. So I guess kind of it's good. I don't know. Hard to tell. Brave the Sands, I really, when I first made this deck back in like what, 2015 or so, I liked it a lot. I had it in my collection, and it's not even bad, but if you guys looked at the new Crimson Vow spoilers, I really like that 4-mana enchantment that makes spirits for whenever you cast an enchantment spell. I really like that card that's going to slot over this. Liliana of the Dark Realms, this sleeve's like marked. Looks like it got bit. That's weird. I noticed Daxos has like the same thing. Maybe something got it. I don't know. That's odd to me. These are good sleeves too. Love Orzhov. Let me show you. Let me show you guys. I got Orzhov sleeves. Orzhov Dex box. Let me see if I can even get it in the camera, but I have an Orzhov tattoo. So I like the Orzhov. Liliana of the Dark Realm. 4 mana. It's ramp. It's ramp and removal, and it's weird, and it's really good with Urborg because you just kill a creature with a minus. You just search your deck for a swamp card, so you get your OG duel, you get a shock land, and if not, you just get a basic swamp. No big deal. I've ulted her a pretty good amount of times too. Like, no joke. I feel like about 40% of games I play her, I ult her. Worst case scenario, she comes into play, I get a swamp, and like she kind of pseudo cantrips in a shitty way, but Merciless Eviction is the best nuke in Magic in my opinion. You choose one, exile all artifacts, enchantments, creatures, or planeswalkers. Usually, you don't say enchantments. You're usually just saying creatures. Wrath of God, you just definitely have to say creatures. Get rid of them all. Bitter Blossom is just a fun way to make little tokens and blockers. They're not like game winning or anything, but they definitely offer like some good support. Smothering Tithe, it's just good ramp. Makes her, it's like mono white Ristic Study in a way. Not like it's not as good, but like no one really wants to pay 2 mana. He's got a ton of treasure. Leyline of the Void, it comes in for free sometimes, and it just stops opponents from playing the game. Like if they're grave heavy, so like no more Reanimator, Flashback, Delve, like doesn't matter, doesn't happen. Hidden Stockpile, looking at where was it, Bitter Blossom, this card kind of combos pretty well with it. So Hidden Stockpile I actually really like. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice beginning of your end step, if a permanent left the battlefield, make a 1/1 servo, pay 1, sacrifice a creature, scry 1. So you can just basically sack creatures to scry 1 for 1 mana, and it also replaces itself, so it's pseudo card advantage. So you can just get a 1/1 and then start paying 1 mana a turn just to sack it, to scry 1, and it replaces itself. I like it. Sorengrim Nemesis, he's a big chunky boy, 6 mana, 6 loyalty. Worst case scenario, he's a kill spell. He does 6 damage to whatever, and I gain 6 life. I like him for the reverse Dark Confidant effect. Feel the top card of your library, put that card in your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to the CMC. This deck has a pretty decent CMC. It's usually around 3, 4, sometimes 5. But I'd probably say it averages around 4 or so. So it's just extra card draw. His ult, never ulted him before, but let's even say commander, base value, you get 41 ones with lifelink. Sounds pretty fun to me. Sun Titan, just get back your low-cost enchantments if they go in the grave, or you can get back lands. Like Silent Clearing is a good example. You can start drawing cards with that, getting it back. Darksteel Mutation just destroys commanders. Just makes them 0/1 indestructible and loses all abilities. So they're really hard to get rid of, and it just shuts them down. Dictative Erebos. So here's where I wanted to talk about Martyr's Bond. Dictative Erebos and Martyr's Bond. Martyr's Bond's a little bit better. When Martyr's Bond or another non-land permanent you control is put into your graveyard, each opponent sacrifices a permanent that shares the type. So if you blow up an enchantment, you sacrifice an enchantment. I lose a creature, you lose a creature. I lose an artifact, you lose an artifact. All that but land, right? So I'll put that down. Dictative Erebos is basically the same thing but creatures, but the combo is when you have Tainted Ether on the field. Whenever a creature comes into play, its controller sacrifices a creature or land. Well, when you have Daxos on the field, what you can do is pay 3 mana, each opponent, and like one of these boys on the field, 3 mana, each opponent loses a creature. So that's really good. They just have to lose their creatures. Curse of Misfortunes is a fun card. Enchant player, at the beginning of your upkeep, search your deck for a curse card. that doesn't have the same name as a curse attached to the player, so it doesn't matter. Put it on the battlefield and shuffle your library. Well, the curses you get in order are Overwhelming Splendor, so all their creatures are 1/1s and they don't have abilities, and they can't activate abilities that aren't mana or loyalty abilities. So their creatures are all vanilla 1/1s, and they can't activate any abilities that aren't planeswalkers or mana abilities. So that kind of shuts them down. Then the final kill card, you give them a Cruel Reality. 7 mana is expensive, but you play it for free with Curse of Misfortunes. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If they can't, they lose 5 life. So that's pretty much Daxos. This is it's just like a clock, because they're not going to have creatures anyways, and the creatures they have aren't going to be worth playing until they can get rid of it. But that's Daxos. The return again. He's like a little bit up sleeve. I wonder if I don't know. I have a cat, but I don't think she got to that shit. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. That's Daxos the Returned. Like, sub, leave a comment what you think, what would be improved, what you like, what you don't like. It doesn't matter. I like hearing from you guys, and I will see you guys next time.